Hi, I'm Reg Rumney. I'm an economics and financial journalist, really, by profession. Before becoming a teacher of economics journalism at Rhodes University, I'm also a researcher. I'm now an honorary research associate at Rhodes University. But it's really my experience of reporting on budgets for 10 years. For 10 years, I reported on national budgets for both the Mail and Guardian and SABC. And um, it was after that that I became interested in municipal finance because I moved to Makonda, that is Grahamstown, and had a column for Grocot's Mail, which involved municipal finance. And I started to look at municipal finance, particularly because I was feeling the effects of poor financial management at the municipal level, living in Makonda, with frequent water outages, frequent power cuts, and refuse in the streets, bad maintenance, and so forth and so on. And it got me interested in the fact that actually coverage of finance at the municipal level hasn't been very good. In an election year like this, you'll see a lot more. But generally speaking, I mean, I'm in all my years in journalism, I think I might have gone to one budget presentation by the Joburg municipality. And in some years, it's been so bad that Joburg municipality has had to take out ads about its budget. There's been no coverage at all, which I think is a really bad thing because municipal services is where the rubber hits the road, as it were, or the potholes in the case of many municipalities. It's really, really important. And follow the money. That's a general journalistic principle. And there's a lot of information available about public finance in South Africa. I don't think that people realize quite how much there is available. And we must remember that nationally, our budget process has been recognized as the best in the world, along with New Zealand's. And that filters down. There's an enormous amount available. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a high level view of where the various municipal pieces fit in and where you can find stories from that eventually. Now, Ray Joe will look specifically at the tools you need to find finances. So I'm going to give a presentation now. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, and we'll go to, okay, there we go. Okay, full screen. Start the slideshow. Okay, all right. So I must say that when I started to look at municipal finances, I realized that actually I hadn't really understood a lot of where local government fits in to the general scheme of things. And I think that for many journalists, the national has been more important than local government. We've been quite obsessed with national government for a very good reason, that when democracy eventually arrived, we started to, our focus was on the national government, on collapsing all the Bantustans, on making a nation again from this supposedly this balkanized state of having supposed homelands all over the place. But I think that now we're beginning to realize the importance of the local level. So where does local government fit in? So the first thing that is supposed to be cooperative governance. In fact, there are three levels: national, provincial, and local, and they're supposed to cooperate, and they do. It's decentralized government. In other words, in theory, closer to the people. In other places, national government tells the local what to do. And in fact, in Singapore, there isn't a local government. There's only one level, and that's national, but that's a city-state in a small island. Generally speaking, around the world, we have layers. But the important thing about the South African model is that it's supposed to be developmental, and that's very important. In other words, it's not just a question of putting in rules. It's supposed to be, local government is also supposed to raise people up, get a better life for all, have more equality, make sure the poor don't suffer, and so forth. And hence, municipalities get a share of national revenue. Okay, so of the amount of money, national revenue, which is mainly tax, most of it goes to national and provincial. And a small amount, about 9%, goes to local. And that money, and we'll look at that in detail later, that money is supposed to provide basic services for people. That's it. Basic, a certain amount of water and electricity is supposed to be provided free to poor people. And we'll see that can be sometimes a problem. And at the local level, there are the metros, and these are the big municipalities like Joburg. And then there are the district municipalities, under which are grouped several local municipalities. Some of the district municipalities have very few residents in them. There are places, the district municipality that covers the Kruger National Park, for instance, obviously has fewer people. And the district municipalities, I think, are becoming more important. But the local municipalities are the ones that I think really get left out some of the time. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the metros for very good reason. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the bigger cities. These are the metropoles. Buffalo City, City of Cape Town, Ekurhuleni, City eThekwini, Joburg, obviously, Mangaung, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Municipality, which used to be Port Elizabeth, and the city of Tshwane. There's 8 of them, and they do take a lot of attention because they're economically very important. I mean, Joburg, for instance, contributes quite a big chunk of the country's gross domestic product. Okay, now another thing to actually keep in mind, that municipalities, though they are closer to the people and they are democratic, we vote for councillors, and the councillors supposedly decide on budgets which serve our needs. They're not completely autonomous. They are importantly governed by strong laws, actually. The first is the Division of Revenue Act. That's one that's passed every year, and it provides for this equitable share. That's that 9% of money from total revenue. The municipalities also get a share of the fuel tax, by the way, and they also get grants from the national government. Then there's the Municipal Structures Act, which provides for ward committees. To what extent those work, I'm not sure. But the really important part, the really important legislation that governs municipalities is the one in the center there, the Municipal Finance Management Act, because that covers budgeting and reporting, and that's the act under which the Auditor General audits municipalities. And then we get the Municipal Property Rates Act, which regulates the power to impose taxes. So, you know, some municipalities, if they had their way, would not only have property rates, they'd also tax you for a whole lot of other things. As it is, there are other taxes other than property rates. When I was in Makonda, I was always very amused that every year in the budget there was a dog tax. There was provision for a dog tax and a small amount of revenue to be raised by the dog tax. And I never saw a single person ever being taxed for having a dog, despite the fact that Makonda had dogs running all over the place. I had a dog. Nobody ever asked me for my dog tax. But yeah, that's so municipalities can't just raise money any way they like. And then there's the Municipal Structures Act, which provides for a framework for performance management, et cetera, But that Municipal Finance Management Act is really important because it governs a whole lot of, it imposes a whole lot of regulations on how municipalities actually manage their finances. Okay, and these are the important actors. You might not be able to see all the small type, but basically municipalities fall under the Department of Cooperative Governance, and it's actually the Cooperative Governance website, if we can pull it up at some stage. It's actually got information on particular municipalities, which is quite useful, though I think a lot of that information is also on the dashboard. SOLGA represents local government, and how effective it is, well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. And then there's National Treasury, which actually oversees the whole thing. National Treasury is a very powerful department, and it keeps a very close eye on municipalities from a finance point of view. And it's also a really incredibly good source of information. The information on the municipal money website that I'm sure Ray will be talking about comes from the National Treasury. It oversees the budgets, the national budget, but it oversees the budget process of the municipalities, and it administers the Municipal Finance Management Act. And then the other important act is the Auditor General, that audits and reports on the financial statements and the performance of all municipalities. And every year the Auditor General puts out a really interesting report, which we'll also talk about. Okay. So this is municipal income. I apologize for the complexity of the graph, but what I'd really like to point out is that if you look here, and this is quite an issue, this was 2020, a large proportion of income of most municipalities, all municipalities, comes, I think, most of them anyway, except those that are so poor that they, or so poor at raising money that they have to rely on national government. Many municipalities anyway rely on the sales of electricity. In this aggregated graph, 26% of the money comes from the sales of electricity. It's second only to grants and subsidies. You know, most of that that's from national government. And property rates is only 16%. And then of course, the sales of water is another 11% now. And then sanitation for refuse removal, 3, and then other about 10. So that, and that's a really interesting thing. And I'll go to the next slide to have a look at that. Yeah. So this is it in bar chart form, which is a bit easier to see. The point is that that is something that has happened not by intention. I think it's because electricity has been the easiest thing to use to raise revenue. Strictly speaking, I suppose municipalities should be getting more from property rates. There's a problem with property taxes, however, because property taxes are a wealth tax and not an income tax. So you can be asset rich and income poor, which is the state I'm in. I'm living in a house that is supposedly worth quite a lot of money, according to the municipality, and they tax me on that, but my income isn't great. So it can be unfair, but the electricity issue has become quite a hot political issue because it seems, you know, there's several problems with that, and there are lots of good stories to be had about that, including the fact that as electricity prices rise, people tend to use less. This is a standard economic principle. As prices rise, people tend to be resistant, and so in Joburg, you'll see that LPG gas is being increasing, not in Joburg, around the country. People are resorting to LPG gas for cooking. I have gas for heating and for cooking. Because, and in fact, in winter, I don't use electricity for heating at all because it is becoming increasingly expensive. And as we use less, well, where's the income going to come from for the municipalities? Because that's how they're making their money. Also, I don't have it here, but municipalities are the biggest source of income for Eskom. About 41%, I think, of their income comes from municipalities. So there's a big problem, potential problem here, but I'll leave it to you to report on that. And then what do those municipalities spend their money on? Well, that's an interesting one as well. Actually, about a third, almost a third, goes on employees, which is not unreasonable. Obviously, you need people to work. But in addition to that, sorry, that's unintentional. In addition to that, we can't really see very clearly here, but they also employ consultants, okay, contractual services, another 8.5. Now, the problem in government generally is when you have employees supposedly doing something and then you employ contractors as well. Is that necessary? Or is it wasteful? Certainly when it comes to financial management, the Auditor General points out usually that municipalities employ people to do their budgets and their financial planning and their financial reports, while there are people in municipalities who are supposed to be competent to do that. And what is even more interesting is that the consultants that are employed by many municipalities to do their financial performance reports are not that competent anyway. So we're losing out twice. Okay. But that's where most of the money goes. And of course, if you have rising employee bills, if you have rising or agreements that employees get paid above inflation every year, then you're going to have a problem eventually, because most of the money that'll eventually, in other words, most of the of the municipal budget will be swallowed by those employee costs. It isn't that so at the moment. And then of course the purchase of electricity takes a lot of money, because that's what you're charging for. Not so much for water, though that might change. Bad debts, not too bad. Interest, not too bad. And other. Now at this stage, I would like to ask the participants, what do they think are the potential sources of revenue for municipalities? Can you sort of tell me in the chat? Does anybody have any ideas? If I can see the chat, of course. Okay. Anybody have any idea what the potential sources for revenue for municipalities, aside from the ones that I've mentioned there? Let me go back. That's the revenue, the contribution to total income. So we have property tax, sales of services like electricity and water, grants from national government. What else? Fines, yes. So that's usually at the provincial level, I must tell you. In fact, I think it is at the municipal infrastructure fund. Yeah, I think that falls under grants, NT grants. Yeah. Rental of properties, absolutely. Yeah. Licenses for certain things. Tourism, well, that's a source of revenue indirectly. And car papers and traffic fines, those are actually provincial competencies. And one of the things that I must mention is that people sometimes confuse the responsibility of municipalities and provinces. The provinces are responsible for health and education as well, largely. And certainly, I remember paying my money over to the provinces in terms of fines, not the municipalities. Refuse collection is in there. Yeah, refuse collection is another service. Business rates, well, it's the same as property rates, really. Water connection fees, that falls under services. Parks and recreation fees, not sure what that is. Parks and recreation should be free, I think. Okay, but thanks, yeah, thanks for that. Okay, and some municipalities have their own resorts. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. The really big one, which doesn't get much attention, is borrowing through municipal bonds. It used to be very big in the past. It is a source of revenue, and it used to receive a lot of attention from the financial press, not so much anymore. But certainly, much like government bonds. But in fact, I mean, really, who covers government bonds? I mean, who even, how many people actually even understand the bond market? But certainly, that is something we should look into. Why can't municipalities raise more money through, and the big ones I'm talking about, you know, the metros? Why can't they raise more money through bonds? Okay, let me move on. Okay, so one of the really interesting questions for me was in teaching municipal finance coverage and in covering it myself is, can you look at a municipality like a business? And how do you, as an economics journalist, as a financial journalist, if I'm reporting about a municipality, can I approach it in the same way as I do a business? And the answer is, well, yes and no. Municipalities do sell services like electricity, and they make money from that. They buy it wholesale, they sell it retail, and they make a margin. And they are expected to be self-sustainable. And if you look at the municipal annual statement, it has an annual report, there's an income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement. And all of this, by the way, is reflected in municipal money, which Ray will look at. And it has common business indicators such as ratios, liquidity ratios, and so forth, which are usually used for businesses. The reason is that municipalities can, and they do go bankrupt, unlike the state, which can't go bankrupt. Municipalities can go bankrupt. But municipalities are monopolies, okay? When residents can't easily change their suppliers as customers do. I suppose one way you can change your supplier of services to move to another city, which people do. And there is a kind of a steady flight from the rural areas to the urban areas for better opportunities. And I'm an example of somebody who's left the rural areas to come to the city again, returned to Joburg. One of the reasons I did so was I couldn't stand the poor level of services in Makhanda anymore. Anyway, but most importantly, and this I think we really have to remember, that municipalities are part of South Africa's democratic system. Councils are elected and are responsible to citizens, and citizens are not customers. We are not customers. We're actually citizens of a democracy. Okay, I'm running out of time here, so let me quickly go on. All right, so one of the things I must mention is that the municipalities are in terrible trouble. We know that, and there's been a lot of reporting on that, and they're under trouble because of urbanization, failures in financial management and financial reporting, and combined with the added stresses recently of the COVID crisis, and then this, I'll call it an insurrection, it's all going to aggravate our financial problems. One of the ways of thinking about this is that the municipalities went into the COVID crisis, they already had comorbidities, okay? If you look at the Auditor General's most recent report, it shows that almost all, it shows that many municipalities are in a dire financial position. And what that means is that they're dependent on that equitable share, which is supposed to go to the poor, to balance their books. Not a good situation. Just finally, before I take some questions, I think I'm running out of time now. The municipal budget process, I just must mention, there are story opportunities at each of these levels of the municipal budget process. We start with planning, we go through to tabling of the budget, publishing the budget, then there are quarterly financial reports throughout the year, annual reports, the financials, and the audit report, very important, and then the annual financials and the auditing. Then an annual report comes out, and it should be audited, and along with it should be an audit report itself from the AG, which is always a really good source of stories. Down here we have the municipal year, which differs from both the calendar year and the tax year. So that's the tax year, starts in March. Municipal year actually starts in July and ends in June. The planning for the budget should start in July 2020. The consultation should go right through to the tabling of the budget, and the budget has to be published before the end of the the municipal year. And those are the times where you can really look and get some really good stories, newsy, and also you know, interesting, not only from immediate newsworthy point of view, but also from the point of view of the future performance of the municipality. Okay, so there's just a slide on, you know, reporting. Audit General is very important. National Treasury produces the budget review. There are integrated development plans produced by the municipality, which are supposed to shape the budget. I don't find them very useful, but they seem to be a bit airy-fairy to me. At the local, in the rural municipalities, they often cut and paste from other integrated development plans. Anyway, that's another story. But those are some things that you can keep in mind, and there's some of the resources over there, but Ray will go into the resources in more detail. Okay, I've got more stuff I can show you, but I'm going to stop the share if I can. I'm going to stop the share.
Great. Thanks, Reg.
All right.
Do you see that
okay.
there? Yeah. Okay. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Reg. And I would like to encourage everybody, if you've got questions for Reg, we've got a little bit of time allocated now. We'll also have time at the very end, you know, sort of in an hour from now for more Q&A. If you've got questions now, please do go ahead and drop them into the chat. I'd like to invite our other panelists to come back on if you can. Any questions we'll put first to Reg, but there may also be some comments from the other panelists if you would like to chime in. We do have we did have a question about if you could talk a little bit more about the role of district municipality. And there was also a question about, is there a minimum standard for service delivery which holds a municipality, which the municipality must adhere to? So Reg, I'm wondering if you could.
That's an interesting question. Is there a minimum standard? Well, my experience is no. Yes, I mean that the Treasury is supposed to, you know, ensure that the municipalities do actually do service delivery. But is there, you know, you're talking about consequence. What is the consequence for a municipality that doesn't do its job? Okay, so this is, I must mention that we tend to look at these things quite technocratically. You know, what is the consequence for the municipality not doing its job and providing services? Well, you know, the real consequence should be that the councillors are all voted out and new councillors put in, and those new councillors replacing all the officials who are not working properly. It doesn't seem to happen that way. The other consequences, well, the AG has consequences, but basically for very bad performance by particularly by the municipal manager. And of course, there are consequences for fraud, and there should be consequences for not complying with legislation. In theory, the mayor and the municipal manager should take those people responsible for not delivering and have disciplinary inquiries and so forth and so on. But that the system doesn't quite work the way I think it was envisaged. I sometimes think we really have a Rolls-Royce model of municipal management with some rather dodgy Alfa Romeo backyard mechanics doing the running. Anyway, no, I don't think there's a minimum level, but I mean, obviously you're not supposed to not deliver services, and that's it. What was the other question? Sorry, was about.
If you could talk about the role of the district municipality.
The district, yes. Look, I think that initially the district municipalities used to cover areas where there weren't many people, and you know, the local municipalities were not very populous either. So they were just a grouping. Now, they are supposed to give aid to the local government in capacity building and various and finances. But you know how I'm not sure how that works when they don't really have much of an ability to raise money themselves. So I know that I'm talking from my experience of covering Makhanda. At one stage, we did get some aid from the district municipality or the water board that served the district municipality, but really the only aid that was forthcoming eventually was from province. Remember, the province has the responsibility to take over running from a municipality that fails. They're supposed to, they put in their own, in Makhanda, they put in their own person. It didn't really work very well. So it's province that really is responsible, but I think the ANC has some plans to use district municipalities, and they're quite complex. I did see a story on it recently in Engineering News, and I'll try and find it and share it with people. I don't have many thoughts on it, but the ANC does, so you can ask them.
Okay, thank you. You know, you had made a comment about looking to the future and sort of using
Yes.
data to like predict in the future. And there's a question actually from Ray, thinking like a journalist. We're going to hear Ray's presentation in just a moment as well. But he asked a question: what would happen to municipalities that depend on bulk sales of water and electricity if they were to lose those revenue sources? So we might have an example of that from the past, but it could also be used for looking for an individual municipality looking to the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, usually what happens is that municipalities fail to recover enough revenue from their residents, either through property rates, people not paying property rates, or not paying for electricity, illegal connections, or inability to pay, not paying for water. And what that means is they're actually in financial difficulty. So there are municipalities which quite a few which are threatened with bankruptcy. Actually, they may in the future not be going concerns, which means the province has to rescue in each case, and so that's one of the consequences of that. But now, if we talk about a municipality that is reasonably run and one that cannot rely on the profits from electricity particularly, and water secondly, well, they'd have to put up rates, and that's a real problem, because how much can people pay? I mean, you know, every time rates increases are announced in Joburg, and Joburg is one of the wealthier municipalities, there's incredible resistance from ratepayers like myself. Not much we can do about it, but you know, there's a competitive element to municipalities. So if Joburg, for instance, decided, you know, damn it, we're not going to rely on electricity sales anymore, we're going to rely on property rates only, we're going to put up property rates immensely, doesn't matter what you say about it, well, one of the things that would happen is, you know, property prices would fall, a lot of people would be rendered bankrupt and so forth. But the other thing that would happen is people would say, you know what, Cape Town looks like a lot better place to live, as long as Cape Town didn't do the same. So there's a competitive element to this. And in fact, you know, even now we've seen a very interesting trend of semigration from among wealthy people, I think, from urban areas to smaller municipalities in the rest of the country, mainly in the Western Cape and sometimes in the Eastern Cape. Yeah. Any, sorry, other follow-up question?
Yeah, I think we're going to leave that with that for now. And I will say, Reg, you're going to stick with us for the next
Let's
hour. Is
finish
that
it.
right?
Yeah,
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to ask everybody, if you've got some questions that you didn't get to ask for Reg, or you may see that the question, something that Reg said, start to sound different when you hear the rest of our presentations, please go ahead and drop those into the chat as we go through. And we will have another Q&A section towards the end of next hour. For now, we're going to turn things over to Ray. Reg, can I ask you to stop sharing your screen so that Ray can go ahead and share his screen as well?
I'm trying. I can stop sharing. Can I just say one thing, that I haven't put up slides on the Auditor General, various aspects of the Auditor General. So if later, if people have questions about that, I can put those slides up. All right.